then I just say that, so if you got a land play you're trying to do, you build a courthouse. And there was a reason that you built a court. First of all, see, I haven't done this in a long time. They petitioned the governor to split off a second county. So they would need a courthouse.
A second county from what? What was the first county? What was the first county?
The whole state,
Well, it would have been,
The District of Maine.
Maine,
Okay.
so they
Was-
made it Lincoln and.
what's
York.
now Cumberland.
It was York then, wasn't
It
it?
was York, wasn't it? It was York.
York.
Yeah, it was the first, it was York and then
And then-
Lincoln,
and
all
then
the way to
Lincoln.
Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and we went all the way to Canada.
At one time.
So when they built the courthouse, it was the only courthouse built north of Boston, and we controlled to the Canadian border. The courthouse was a very clever thing to build for a lot of reasons. A, it was the seat of government and law, but by law, if you had a courthouse, you had to have a tavern.
Oh,
I like that.
And the reason was that because the judges and the attorneys came on circuit and you had to put them up.
lodging.
But even when the court wasn't here, the tavern still was and became a very good anchor for a community. Plus the big room upstairs, the courtroom, could be a church, a dance hall, a school, all kinds of good community things
yeah, civic.
could happen.
Yeah.
So that was another reason to build this building. So, and so it was very much on the theory of if you build it, they will come. And it started to work. So anyway, then you come through this door and you're into,
May I ask the question, do you tie in the forts?
oh
at all?
yes, I'm sorry, I
Because
skipped
you
once
got,
over
you
like
got
that.
Richmond, you got Shirley, you got,
I only do
Western-
Shirley more. And because I say that it was here and Samuel Goodwin, good point. Samuel Goodwin was here running that fort as a scouting fort mostly. And that we have done the archaeology, we can't find it. We know that it probably was like Fort Western, your standard fort, 2 blockhouses on diagonal ends. We know that one was kept as the jail, which is now under the LeMacon's house. Because it was this nice big strong long building, made a great jail. We think the other one is probably under this L.
this is the blockhouses?
The 2 blockhouses.
Really? Under here?
Corner to corner, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it
Probably-
was further over, no?
I was
No.
thinking that end of the L, but,
Well, we don't
We
know
don't know.
because you
Well,
can't
who
get
knows?
under there.
right.
Oh, that's true.
But
Oh, that close,
it
that
would
close
that
to the
would
courthouse.
well, yeah. Think about Fort Western from there to the LeMacon's
Yeah.
is a pretty
Well,
big
Gershom
space.
Flag designed and built both of them,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Did it?
I haven't finished this, but Gershom started this.
Yeah, Gershom
He built
started
the
both, so the design would have been
Would it, well, and
similar.
and the fort things was pretty
Standardized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
cookie cutter.
Gresham Flag built both what?
Shirley and Fort Weston.
Oh, he did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I didn't know that.
yeah.
So then
But-
he came back and built the Fort House.
So
And then
and-
came back, yeah, he was the man.
Yeah.
yeah,
Really?
he was, and he was also a member of the proprietors.
He was the
A
trust.
small
oh,
member,
sorry,
but
did I
a
say
member
that?
of the
Yeah.
proprietors. So anyway, when they decide to play this land grant, they say, Gershom, baby, build us a courthouse. And we come in here, you're now in the courthouse.
Good, so you tied it together
Yeah.
in a way, that makes sense.
And there's one way, is make them come stand right here.
Okay.
Because you can see how big the place is. It's 40 by 38, if you stand there, you can see both dimensions. And then I say that this amazing building, first of all, the facades are identical. Because the main facade actually was the river facade. Because the river was the road and the land entrance was not as important, but they were identical. And it was a business. And they said, Gershom, make it impressive, but don't waste any money. And I think he nailed it. I mean, the outside of this building is seriously impressive, but there's no ornamentation. There's no dentition. There's no, it's all done on proportion.
And it's pretty stark. And I think that's one of the things that's attractive to people. We're thinking, they can relate this building back to 1770s a lot better now than they would if it was all plastered and wallpapered and so on. Because there are equally older buildings in town and throughout this area. But by having stripped all the plaster lives off these walls, to put it back where it originally was,
Well,
it shows how stark it is.
part of my whole thing is that I'm an architecture freak, which I bring, especially on when we get to the hall, the paneling and stuff. But the other thing, which to me is incredible about this building, it is, call it 40 by 40, 3 stories tall, hipped roof. There is not one internal vertical support.
I know, that's what's amazing.
The entire thing is carried on the outside walls and the beams. Even these humongous chimney blocks, which each have 7 flues, are not structural, they're actually holes through the building. They're not holding anything up, they're just going
They're
through.
sitting on their own foundation.
They're setting on stone foundations in the basement, but they're not helping to hold the building up.
Right.
The whole thing is held together when we get to the 3rd floor by what are called dragon beams that go across the corners. And I personally think it was a gutsy design. He knew his physics, and the proprietors were pretty gutsy to let him go on a building this big.
I mean, you think about it, you got the, what is it, the crown comes on, goes across and the dragon goes into the corner. And then you've got a beam that is your rafter that goes to the king post up in the, I've
Up
never
to
seen anything like that.
Yeah. It-
Never.
If you have architecture people that know what they're doing and you let them up in the attic, they'll freak. Normally we don't, but if they know what they're doing and you've got the time, it's really worth it because it's unbelievable.
That's where you match your tour to the people that are there. And a lot of times, I Dostan did it at the jail, but not here. And I used to start them out there at the Kennebec River, saying that this was the I-95.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
so I go to the jail, the courthouse, because of the way the county was set up, and this was the center, and then because of the way population went, it moved to Wiscasset.
Well, it
And then
was-
I jump off there. but-
I mean, this was a land play. It was a stupid place to have it. Really, Wiscasset makes sense. By the way, this table we think was Samuel Goodwin's. We don't know for sure, but we think. And oh, it's not there. The dough box comes out of Swan Island. It is in fact missing its lid. If you have anybody that cares about cooking, I can do a separate riff on cooking later, because I'm an 18th century chef. But one thing, just apropos, if anybody notices, this is a fun thing. When I first started working here, this little door here was propped up like it was meant to close the oven. Well, it never fit the oven. And it fits that little hole absolutely perfectly. And what was that little hole for?
This here.
The ash hole, yes.
Beg your pardon?
It's an ash hole.
As he bent over.
I don't know, I just don't know if Nancy knows some of this stuff. You know about
Yeah.
ash holes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and soap making, etc.
Half-hole.
Okay, one of my
And
favorite things.
bullets, right? They used it for gunpowder, the ash. Didn't it work with gunpowder too?
Yeah, I think so.
It makes saltpeter out of it.
You could make saltpeter, yeah. One thing is, when we had the chimneys repointed a bunch of years ago, we had a modern mason working on them under the tuition of Richard Irons, and he fell in love with this building, which was cool. And we were here, it was October, it was cold.
Haven't we all?
And we're in here, and he's saying, I love watching a 20th century mind get to grips with an 18th century. He said, and I love they did that so they would always have a draft for the fire.
Oh.
And I just got hysterical, and I said, in this building, don't need another draft, no matter what.
Wasn't that Ben Franklin's stove? He eventually added a draft to it,
So it would pull,
so he
right?
had a better draw. But
Yeah.
It wasn't like that in the beginning.
But I mean, Paul, the whole, he had absolutely no concept of saving the ashes, which is also why they never used pine. It was always hardwood, so
Hardwood they could, yeah.
it makes good ash.
Fellow dose.
Also, it makes good coals, because if you're cooking in here, you don't want fire, you want coals.
Right.
My great grandmother said elm was the best wood for keeping the banking of fires overnight.
Elm.
My
That's
grandfather
good.
was
Apple is
my
wonderful.
grandfather was the engineer in a little clothespin mill right across from where they lived, and he would go down at 9:30 at night, fire the boilers up with elm. He has saved, and in the morning he'd still have that much water in the glass, and he'd
By the way,
still have 10 pounds of pressure, and he could.
The
crank
whole
fire
thing about
go
stairs
cold.
in this building,
Harry,
nobody knows.
I
Sorry.
just got a call from my wife. My son expects me to pick him up at Portland. He wasn't renting a car.
My.
So my fellow ash pit people.
Ash hole people.
As opposed to mass.
I am from
people.
Athol, as a matter of fact, so forgive me.
Yes,
I have to go. So.
you do. Well,
I'm learning. I've learned something in 2 rooms.
Yeah.
well, you see? Come
Are
back,
you
we'll do
sending
it again.
that to anybody?
Yes, I'm gonna.
Jesus, Mary Ann.
I'll set it up so and send a
Maybe
link
I'm
to you
saying-
all.
Thank you, Ed.
We found that coat. We'll skip it all. Forget it.
Yeah.
Why are we skipping it? Now, see, that's something I.
It's not that important.
Did you find it in the building then?
We found it in, it and the pair of pants upstairs we found in storage in the jail. And this is probably it was made for a woman or a child, 18th century style tailoring. We think, I took it to Williamsburg and had them evaluate it. We think it was for the centennial in 1876. Because there's just anomalies between what it looks to be and what it is.
I was gonna take a taxi.
But they went nuts over it and said it's cool, so.
You was, but I'm going.
And when this light goes on,
Thank you.
this china
I'm glad you're feeling better.
belonged, and here's the note.
I've never.
It was a judge in Wisconsin, and his family gave all this blue china
When you're 9.
and said it had been,
When you're older than that.
in the courthouse. Well, P.S. I used to be a dealer. I looked it up. It was made after he died.
Oh well.
It was in his family, fine.
But
But it was not his, so we got it the hell out of the living room, cheered this area up, and we've, over the last couple years, tried to get this into being like a real parlor that you could use. But speaking of Gershom flag, here he is, our man himself. And here's his nephew, whom he sent up here to be the clerk of the works. And one thing that, it's such a wonderful tradition from the medieval ages, the nephew signed the beam.
Yeah, it's right up there.
It's like
It's,
the
looks like a
guys.
J, but it's.
Yeah.
They
J is
didn't
an
have a
I,
J
it's
yet.
to be
They were
the
still
same.
using the Roman
Yeah,
I.
it's right up there.
Cool.
So Perry, did you say this is a nephew?
no.
No,
to the right.
That
Keep
guy's
going.
flag.
This is Gershom.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
So to the
Gershom.
right.
And
All the way
this
to
is
the
his
right.
nephew.
Oh, this is the nephew here.
That's
Oh,
the
okay.
nephew, yeah.
This place is so beautiful.
And, oh, by the way,
We have a
Faye
little.
was extremely excited. Oh, you. When I went upstairs last night with Faye, Reb,
Yeah.
the kids will not fit in the bedroom.
Yeah,
But Faye thought it was cool if we could put them here.
I hear you.
Well, because we have family portraits here,
Yeah,
and we
it's a
can
family
figure
room.
out, I think one of these guys is their grandfather, maybe great.
Mhm.
Anyway, the two male portraits are the brothers who after the courts moved to Wiscasset, this turned into a family home. And in, 1813,
Wow.
12? around then that the boys got title?
No, it was 94, 1794,
Yeah, it
wasn't it?
was-
No, when they got
You get the title?
personal,
Yeah,
it's in
I'm
the
sure.
early 18s. You can look it up, it's in Shelby's thing. Anyway, the two brothers had to fight their way through the heirs of 32 proprietors to get clear title to this building. In the end, the proprietors were quite glad to get rid of it because it was in terrible repair and was going to cost a lot of money to fix. But after they moved in 1761, so 71, 81, 91, 01, call it 50 years it had been a family home, they finally owned it, which was nice for them.
And
That's
very-
their sister.
And very little had been done as far as maintaining the room for anything. I guess they had, amazing leaks in here.
Yeah, it was, if the boys didn't get it, it would have fallen down.
It was on the way out, yeah.
Yeah, and but one thing what I love is, we have their contract for it, they made it into a condominium.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Family
yes.
A got this side, family A got, B got that side, and the agreement, it's down in the archives in Portland, agree to split the costs of the roof, the attic, the hallways, and the cellar.
Yeah.
And when we get to the other side, one of their wives was sickly and led to some changes on the other side, which is kind of cool. But
And who was this?
that's their sister.
Okay, so that's Rebecca. Yep.
She's a brat, isn't she?
No,
What?
no, she's a Johnson.
Yes.
So that's Rebecca Johnson,
Yes,
Excuse me.
daughter of Rebecca Goodwin.
I believe.
Yes.
You know the family tree better than I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were the three siblings when the boys got the house. And-
She married at Prescott, and so she was living in New Sharon at the time that her husband died. She moved back down here with her three daughters
Yes.
as Rebecca Prescott. One of the Johnson boys, which was Roland,
Yes.
lived in Philadelphia. Took one of the daughters and raised one of
Yes.
the daughters in Philadelphia.
Yes, okay.
The other
And he
two-
liked her because she was a
The
redhead.
redhead.
Yes, you read that book.
I've
So
been reading
she
my.
and her other two daughters stayed here with the two brothers, yeah.
Right. Well, and it worked out really well because one of the brothers was a merchant and ran the tavern and the post office, because the other one was a ship's captain
Yeah,
and was away a lot. So there was always somebody
yeah.
here
So Thomas.
being the
Thomas-
man of the house.
Thomas was the one that was the postmaster and, took care of the house, and he was the.
And he died here
Yes.
at
Really?
age 94 or something.
No, he was young.
Was he young? Because I remember doing the research when we were going to do the Halloween thing last
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
That he was a ghost we might have had. Anyway, what we're trying to do in this room is actually make it look like a parlor that somebody could use. That somebody made the wonderful point that the drop front desk is an 18th century filing cabinet, business center, everything with the various drawers that would lock. And Goodwin could run everything from there. When they first moved into the building in 1761, that was their kitchen and the tavern. This was their family space. That was it. And the courtroom, which is upstairs. But the company had run out of money. And they didn't finish the other side. It was a howling wilderness for another bunch of years before they were able to get
Well,
that
that
side.
chimney didn't get built till 9 years later.
I know,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
they finished that side. So in the beginning, only this end of the courtroom was warm. Because the other one wasn't there yet. I mean, this is my tour. It's not
Right.
necessarily chronological or whatever. Anyway, we then come across the hall and there's a couple of cool things here, and it's gonna get way cooler. First of all, this is from Fort Shirley. It's probably the oldest thing we know we have in the building. It was the musket case from Fort Shirley. The gun, you don't need to tell anybody, it's an absolute cob job.
Yeah, it's not a
And
brown
it's-
vest.
Fit to hang over somebody's mantelpiece, and that's about it. but it looks good. And what I loved the idea the other night of bringing the locked case with the powder horn and the
Canteen.
canteen from in there. We have that cute little lock case. We've got a plinth down at the jail that we can bring and paint. And we can put here and have like a soldier thing and make something interesting out of this hall. Plus, this is Governor Pownell
Oh, yeah. Right.
this is an etching from a portrait.
He's,
And he is for whom we are named. And he was the royal governor of
he's
Massachusetts.
the predecessor of Governor Shirley? Is he the predecessor of Governor Shirley?
I don't,
Yeah,
I think-
I don't know.
I think Shirley.
he was obviously still around or they wouldn't have bothered naming
Yeah,
it
that's
for him.
right.
Because the whole thing was a political leverage
This was
thing.
Fort Shirley to begin with.
Right.
So maybe he,
So maybe he succeeded.
He may have succeeded.
Yeah.
Anyway, the problem with Pownell
Fort
was,
Shirley.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say probably, since
he came
Fort
later.
Shirley,
Yeah.
Fort Frankfurt became Fort Shirley, and that would have been when he was the governor.
When Shirley was.
Shirley was.
So if you're gonna then turn it into Pownell, but
Probably
the thing
earlier.
about Pownell was, everybody liked him. There was Pownell here, there's Pownell, Vermont. I mean, and the problem was the Brits didn't really want their governors to be liked. And he effectively got demoted and sent to somewhere like Jamaica. I mean, he was
That's
basically,
rough.
I mean, you
Oh,
know,
back then it probably was.
put out to pasture, but in a nice place. But I had a great grandmother who ended up being, that happened to him as Governor General of the Barbados, and he said it was the most boring thing that ever happened to him. Anyway, here we have, and it's one of the very, very cool things that we were built by a company, not a person, because they had to keep records. And James Flagg kept these, and these are down in Portland at the archives. And they're so cool because they're the day books. And it goes to buy 6,000 shingles, X amount of money. To buy X thousand nails, X amount of money. To buy 35 gallons of rum, X, because without the rum, you didn't have any work. And the other thing is the list of the workers, and you go down and the names are still in the area. It's very cool.
And also somewhere, I think it's listed right here, the number of lights that they bought, which is actually the window panes.
Yeah.
They call them lights.
Lights,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact, we have everything that happened in this building. When we get up to the third floor, the jury room on the third floor is the only one that's plastered. And we know it's the jury room because we have the bill that said to plaster the jury room, X square feet of plaster. And that's exactly the square foot of plaster in that room. I mean, it's an incredible thing to have the detail
Yeah.
of building this building.
Right.
And I'm going to borrow this map for our new survey exhibit, which is going to happen in the jury room, because it is done by Samuel Goodwin himself, who was a surveyor, and it's of this area split into lots.
So, was Major Samuel Goodwin a proprietor as well on the
Yes,
Kennebec
very, a
Horizon?
small scale one,
Small percentage.
which is how come they kicked him up here to run the fort. I mean,
Similar to a person. about
well,
the same-
I think Gershom was more, I don't know the exact percentages, Jay would know them, but I have a feeling Gershom was rather more important than Sam.
Oh, okay.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think this could be an interesting, and again, make this from almost dead space into something.
And what did you say you had to set?
It's a plinth. It says,
That's what I thought you said.
we got rid of stuff that was cluttering up the tool shed at the jail, and they're beautiful, you know, absolutely square, just plain things of, and we were gonna ditch them, and I suddenly said, no. Someday we're gonna want those for a display.
What
And
is,
they're gonna-
what is a plinth?
A plinth is something that something goes on top of. Like the bottom
I
of,
generally call that a table, but that's just me.
no, think tombstone.
Yeah,
You're not gonna put it on a table, you're gonna put it on a solid chunk of rock.
okay.
That's a plinth.
Oh, okay. So it's a pretty stable,
Yes, exactly. And if you go to have them made for display purposes, they're gonna cost a lot of money. So we've got some down at the jail, and we can get one that'll go under that little yellow, and we can bolt the yellow to it,
Raise it, okay, yeah.
so that
That's
it's,
good,
and then
yes.
put it against the wall.
yeah.
What happened to all the silverware that was in the corner?
That hasn't made it back up here.
It hasn't made it back up here. And that's another one, let me just throw this at you, I'd like to get that damn case out of the living room. Who has a case in their living room?